my good friend Kevin Moon is in on this episode as well, and this is another one of the topics that he suggested. I know I said I'm not gonna be hitting the music, but I've still got this one and another music related one with him coming out, and I'm going to be recording one hopefully soon. My first one from a distance, hopefully in the next couple of weeks with late start, my guy Noah France. I'm going to be recording another music one soon. But this one, that Kevin had the idea for this topic. And at first I was like, that's not a good topic. I don't know how we do that. I don't know how you rate greatest hits albums, because clearly, a greatest hits album is put together, and a friend of mine who loves to make fun of everything I do, he's like, how can you do that? Well, then I started looking, and clearly, every band puts a greatest hits out. There are bands that have one hit that have a greatest hits because they think those songs, obviously they love their songs, but I started looking around at my favorite greatest hits albums, the ones that when I was a kid, and we get into it in the pod, but, a greatest hits when you didn't have a whole lot of money as a kid, that was a way to get a bunch of really good songs, and when you're the king of fast forwarding and rewinding, like I was, you didn't listen to whole albums. And then when you get streaming and you can, the way we do it now, I listen to whole albums more. But when I started looking into the greatest hit, the greatest hits or compilations or box sets, which I had a number of them. Some of them are actually right there. The really good one is right. It's really hard to do that. Pink Floyd box set right there is not really a greatest hits, but as $150 well spent, it of course sets right up there and never gets used. But, it was fun to look at it, and there are some really good ones out there. And when I Googled it, beyond the ones that I thought of initially, it's a good topic. And I hope I never get a lot of comments from people. It was probably like 6 people actually listened to them. It's not true. It's more than that, but I wonder what would be your favorite greatest hits album. What's a greatest hits album that you listen to, that you enjoy? Maybe it takes you back, because my list has a bunch of stuff that were a big deal to me when I was in high school and middle school. So without further ado, my friend Kevin Moon, the greatest hits albums of all time on the Anthony Wherley's podcast. Best ever. Enjoy. You came up with this topic. And I'm sitting here with my friend Kevin Moon. We grew up together. We're kindergarten together. We've known each other our whole lives. We graduated from high school in 1989. The yearbook right there in front of Kevin. Who did the artwork on the front of that?
Oh, some weirdo.
I could take a shot at one of our classmates and not.
No.
I'm not going to.
I
did that.
I might have done it.
I also have a basketball hoop in my kids' room that you drew the thing on it. You didn't get any royalties off that, did you?
They did not even give me a free one of those. I asked the principal, it's like, can I have one of those since my artwork's on it? He just sort of laughed at me. That's a great memory.
That's ridiculous.
I concur.
That's ridiculous. Anyway, I'm glad to have my dear friend Kevin Moon in my house, in my podcast quotation studio. And when you and I talked about you coming on here with me, you weren't sure about it. And then you sent me some topics that you thought, hey, let's do these. If we're going to do this, let's do these. And this topic that we're doing right now, we just recorded another one that's going to be great. And whether I put that one out before this one, it doesn't really matter. But you sent me this one and I wasn't sure about it. And it's music related, which music is my favorite thing in the world, over sports, over everything. And at first I wasn't sure whether I could, is it good? How deep does it go? And then I start putting together a list and I'm like, this is a great one. This is in its own way is better along the lines than a year, than like picking the albums from a year. So you said, let's do greatest hits / compilations / box sets. Let's do that. And now I have this crazy, awesome list, eclectic, all over the place. I put thought into this. Like, I enjoyed this one as much as I have any of the other music ones that I've done. So I'm glad that you inspired me to do this. I'm looking forward to doing or going back and forth and seeing what's on yours and on mine. And so give me your 2 cents of why you thought this would be a good idea.
Awesome. So I just thought it would be interesting to maybe have this be a separate topic as opposed to just because you've done some podcasts already with your favorite albums of this year, favorite albums of that year. And when I was thinking of I thought, well, I'd like to do one about, my favorite albums. And I started thinking, well, a lot of my favorite albums are actually, these compilations and box sets. And I thought that could just be its own podcast. And then, beyond that, then it'd free me up to do, my favorite albums without picking any, box sets, like making a demarcation between, collected material and then an original album. I still hope we can do that maybe like for a decade or just over a period of time or something like that.
It's because if you've listened to these, and again, I'm breaking my son's rule. I'm speaking over you.
No, you're fine.
I'm interrupting you. My brilliant children telling me how my podcast should be.
You're fine.
But the thing is from listening, because you've listened to the Anthony Wherley's podcast, I'm kind of a stickler about I don't like soundtracks. I don't like greatest hits in my best albums of a year. I want them to be an album. And this is a perfect way to get those them into a pod.
Exactly.
Because it fits into that. And that's why I love this topic. And again, I'm not, kissing your butt about it. It was one of those things where, and I want to say it this way. When we were growing up, a greatest hits, you would get it because you didn't have the money to buy an entire catalog of a band. You weren't buying every single album because you heard this song or this song or this song. Now, in the world of Spotify, I can do that easily, or Apple Music or whatever, or YouTube. I can go listen to stuff to where when you and I were in the 7th grade, we're pleading with our mothers to get us, now I'm going to get to this, to get you, it ended up being a greatest hits because you could get multiple of those songs that you heard on the radio instead of buying album A, B, C, D. And I think that's what made this neato. It was doing it this way. And this is going to be one of my favorites. I really love this. And I'm glad this topic is something we're talking about.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. And then, compilations can mean greatest hits or whatever from within an artist's own catalog or musical act's own catalog, or featuring many artists, like K-Tel album. If you remember K-Tel,
yeah,
you might have something to say about that. I'm sure
100%.
You're like the K-Tel king, probably
in our next pod, probably.
Yep.
But.
Very good.
So let's get going. Let's jump right into it. But I want to jump in. I'm throwing you a curveball. I'm jumping in ahead of time. So I know I'm doing this different. I didn't even tell you this, so I'm throwing you off. If you're listening to this, I'm going to get these 2 things out of the way. All right. I'm going to get my special mentions out of the way. If you have any special mentions while I'm talking, throw it out at me. Here's what I'm doing.
Okay.
I am known for my love of Led Zeppelin, and anyone that knows me knows that Pink Floyd is my favorite band of all time. I listened to The Dark Side of the Moon this morning. I listened to The Dark Side of the Moon the last 7 days straight, and probably the 7 before that. So I'm going to throw these out. These are not on my list. And you're like, how do you not have them? Because I'm not picking between my children. So I'm getting these out of the way. Led Zeppelin's first box set with the crop circles on it is not on my list. It's the first box set that I remember. You and I used to, this is funny. I hadn't thought of this, but now you're sitting across from me.
I remember seeing that at your house.
I would put 4 discs in my 5 CD changer, and you and I would play Name That Tune on Led Zeppelin through that box set.
You, me, and Jerry did that one time.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
So I'm taking that one out. It's not on my list. It's on a different level. Second one, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. In the room behind you is the $150 box set for Pink Floyd. It's called Shine On. It has all of the studio releases up to that point, from Pipers at the Gates of Dawn through A Momentary Lapse of Reason. I don't think the final cut is in it. I don't think. It's got Wish You Were Here. It's got The Wall, obviously. It's got Saucer Full of Secrets. It's got Animals and whatever. I'm not including it because it's a compilation. It's not really a compilation in a way, and yes, it's in a box, but it's just the studio releases. You know what I'm? You know, it's like they didn't pick certain songs to be on it and not be on it.
Are there any extra tracks at all?
There's nothing new, and there's
Yeah.
one called Early Singles that came in the box.
Yeah.
But it was like things that were already on other stuff. So, and I'm not influencing what you put on your list. I'm not changing the rules.
Well, no, I'm going back and changing it all around.
Right.
I got my pen
I
here.
wanted to get those two out of the way because those are my two. Anyone that grew up with us knows that I was Led Zeppelin all day, every day when we were kids.
Right.
And Floyd is my favorite band ever, and I listen to him every day. So those are out of the way.
Is that the one with Sid Barrett's mummified remains in it, or was that the 2009 re-release?
Yeah, no, I didn't pay the extra $50 for his ashes.
Man, cheapskate. Fair enough. All right.
Okay, so now you tell me where you're going to start, because we talked about we have rapid fire, we have rapid fire, we have our top 10, and then we'll get into our fives. So why don't we go to rapid fire for you? The things that you were like.
Well, no, this is going to be super basic. I'm just going to do my top 10, like 10 through 2. And then I've got like 5 honorable mentions and then number 1. And then that's it for me.
Okay. So let me throw out then, I'm just going to, my podcast, I'm going to
go for it.
Here's my rapid fire.
Freeform, baby. Take as long as you want.
Please comment on these as we go.
Gotcha.
My rapid fires that were in my pool didn't make didn't make the top 10.
Okay.
Eagles Volume 2.
Okay. Which is that no, that's
It looks like an album.
Hotel
Target on it.
California.
Yeah.
Yep, got it.
Duran Duran Decade.
Oh my God, that had that was essential. It's got the single version of the Reflex on it.
So good.
I think that was the first time it appeared on an album. Yeah, that was
good.
I had that one.
And
Have it.
Kelly Butcher. Kelly, I apologize that it's not on my list.
One of my favorite cassettes.
When you're listening to this, Kelly, don't hold it against me.
Great choice.
David Bowie's Changes Bowie.
Okay.
Changes Bowie was one I bought on CD. Had things that I had never listened to. Made me fall in love with him even more. Lynyrd Skynyrd's the Essential Lynyrd Skynyrd. Fleetwood Mac's Greatest Hits Green album cover.
Oh, yeah.
Was good. Had a lot of things on it.
Oh, I think I might have had that on CD a long time ago.
Yeah,
one
it was.
time.
I had it on CD. It's good.
Kind of an emerald green.
AC/DC, Who Made Who, for basically the soundtrack for Maximum Overdrive, the Stephen King adapted movie.
A question that's never been answered yet.
Who Made Who is a new song. There was DT was instrumental, and Chase the Ace were things that weren't released on anything else. Al Green's Greatest Hits. There was a time period when I was like figuring out what I liked in music when we were in our early 20s, and Al Green, I'd never listened to him before.
Oh, what a neat choice. That's
so
cool.
good.
All right.
Simon and Garfunkel's Greatest Hits.
Oh, very
with
nice.
The two of them on the front of it. I was working at Western. A couple of guys I knew were listening to it, and I started listening to it. My parents listened to Simon and Garfunkel when we were kids. Didn't really listen to them much. That's good. And then the last one that I don't know how in the hell it isn't on the other list, Rock and Soul Part 1 from Hall & Oates.
Oh, yeah.
Say It Isn't So.
I still have that in
or whatever.
cassette.
Yeah, it's so good. That's a good mix.
It's got 2 new tracks on it.
Right, yeah.
Adult Education, Say It Isn't So.
Very, very good. Okay, so number 10, Kevin Moon on
right.
your top 10 greatest hits.
All right, excellent. And then I again, like the last one, a few of these will be ties, but within the same artist. But I'm not going to take too long on any
It's
one
okay
of them.
to cheat.
Number 10, Genesis Archive, 1967 and 1975. This came out in 1998. It's 4 discs. The first 2 discs are the complete live performance of The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway concert that they did. The third disc is a disc of more live recordings and rare tracks, and then there's a 4th disc of unreleased tracks and demos. But this is an amazing package. The package itself is beautiful. It's just it's got a great booklet. It's got so many great songs. I still have the physical edition of this. I will say that for some of these, I have the physical edition still. Some of these, I used to have the physical edition, but don't anymore. And some of these, I only have the digital version, but I still have the physical edition of this. I love the size of this. It's perfect. It's like 10 inches high and 5.5 inches wide and like a 3/4 of an inch deep. And I've got other box sets with the same dimensions, so they look nice in a bookshelf. But that's a really excellent compilation. I have an also worth noting a Genesis 1970-75 box set from 10 years later, 2008. It's basically contains all the remastered CDs and DVDs of their 2nd through 6th albums, plus an extra track CD. I don't have the physical edition of this, but I do have the digital version of the extra track CD, and it's also amazing. It's got a few extra tracks that weren't on the Genesis Archive box set that I mentioned, including Genesis Plays Jackson. But anyway, both of these iterations of Genesis, I want to get around to saying that this was when Peter Gabriel was still the lead singer. He was the lead singer until 75.
Yep. I was going to clarify for any of my younger friends who might listen to this. You are a huge Genesis fan and have been for years, and there are people who remember Genesis as Phil Collins, and if I remember correctly, you like both.
Yep.
I mean, you're not an elitist.
I love both.
So I mean, we're talking Peter Gabriel times,
right? So I wanted to clarify that this is the Peter Gabriel years from when they first started in '67 to when Peter Gabriel left in '75. But to me, that's the good stuff.
Which is insane when you think that he left in '75 when we were like 4 years old. So
I was not aware of that version of Genesis until college.
Yep. You have been an influence on me in terms of listening to some of those older Genesis albums.
Oh, really?
And I think that's why, we just did one about TV, and again, I could just do nothing but music pods. But yeah, no, I can only assume if you're suggesting to listen to this or that this is good, that I believe you that it is definitely good. My number 10 is funny because I didn't get the name of the album of it, and it's kind of at number 10 because of its title in a way. For Christmas one year, I got a greatest hits called 10 from 6 from Bad Company. And I never understood, what's 10 from 6 mean? And then it may have been until the internet age that I realized that it's the 10 best songs from their first 6 albums is why it's called 10 from 6. It has, what you would consider to be some of their greatest hits. It has a bunch of really good songs on it that I really do enjoy. Obviously, Bad Company and Rock and Roll Fantasy and Shooting Star. And I think the thing that I realized through this listening process of doing this podcast is how when we were kids, I maybe didn't like song A, B, and C on a greatest hits that now I do. That 35 years later, almost 40 years later, I like this song now that when we were 15, I was like, that song sucks. I don't like that. How much our tastes change over that period of time. Bad Company and may be one of the most underrated bands from that time. Paul Rodgers' voice is one of my favorite voices. He's terrific. I loved him in The Firm. When the super group with him and Jimmy Page and whatever, he was in the band Free, which they're fantastic too. So 10 from 6 is my number 10.
Well, I'm not super familiar with Bad Company. There's one song by them I love, Silver, Blue, and Gold, but beyond that,
which is not on there.
That's a shame.
No, that's what I'm saying.
It's from Run with the Pack, right?
Yeah,
okay.
Again, why I love Spotify. It's a running joke in these pods that I own stock in them because I bring it up all the time, blah, blah, blah. But it gives you the opportunity. And I've listened to all their albums that we never would have been able to listen to them when we were kids.
Well, I will say for any of these that anything that you suggest that you really love that I have not, that I'm not familiar with, then I will make it a point to catch up on.
Yeah, absolutely. Give them a listen because I'm not kidding. Paul Rodgers' voice is as good as anybody's from the 70s, in my opinion.
I'll do that. And I did do that with some things that you suggested on your other pods. Like I caught up on Stevie Ray Vaughan and I listened to that Let's Dance by David Bowie that he played on. I listened to some other albums that you guys suggested. There's a Sade album, some other albums that are slipping my mind at the moment. So I
mean, that's the whole point in doing this.
Somebody
for sure. Somebody hears something, you
mentioned
ZZ Top. Yeah, Eliminator. right?
Holy crap! Yeah, that was the
10 out of 11. 10 out of 11.
that was mind blowing.
Yeah.
That was
how
great.
good it is. I mean, it really is.
Yeah,
Yeah. Really, really good.
listener Tony.
Yes, always. Number 9
Oh,
on
my
your
turn?
list of the greatest hits.
All right, so this will surprise you. I mean, number 10 and 9 might be surprising where they're at if you knew me in college and who my favorite musical acts were. Number 9 is ABBA, Thank You for the Music. This was their box set from 1994.
Are you feeling well?
Feeling quite well.
Okay.
I'm feeling.
I don't know how it's this low.
I feel
there
elated.
Must be another one higher on the list.
If you think no, I don't. I will say like I'm once I talk about a musical act at a certain musical position, that's it.
Okay. All right.
So,
I'm surprised by this, but
No worries. No, I still love ABBA. Just I was ravenous. I was rabidly ravenous about them in the 90s, as you probably remember.
yeah.
But this particular box set was like their huge one that came out in 1994. It's 4 CDs. The first three CDs are just basic, all their greatest hits. But the 4th CD was, at that time, it was rare and unreleased stuff. Again, it's another excellent package. It's a beautiful booklet, the same exact size and shape as the one I talked about at number 10. As I said, in the 90s, I was a huge ABBA fan. At the time, this was mind-blowing at the time. It was awesome. And ABBA back then was much more than a band that I liked. This was like a gateway to making friends. In fact, I was on this, this will sound dorky, yet kind of cool at the same time. In 94, I was, this was just before the World Wide Web exploded, but I was on an email mailing list, the ABBA mailing list. So it was like email only, but I met like a lot of people in Europe and became friends with them. And so like a couple years later, 96, I went backpacking across Europe and I met all these friends in real life that I met on the ABBA mailing list. That's how I met them. So
yeah, I knew there had to
it's
be
a gateway.
One of their albums somewhere on your list.
It's a bit lower, but then if you consider all the thousands of albums out there, then number 9 isn't so bad after all.
That is true. My number 9 is something that I got my hands on, and I still believe it was an import. You couldn't find it, you couldn't get it. They hadn't released other greatest hits, and they have a million now. I was mentioning it earlier. My number 9 is Queen Greatest Hits.
Very nice.
The cover of it's black. It's a picture of the band on it. At the time that I got my hands on it, again, like I said, you couldn't, it was an import. It was more expensive. It had everything on it. It had all of the ones that you would think should be on it. We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions and Another One Bites the Dust and Stone Cold Crazy and You're My Best Friend. Like you go down the list, and it even had some of those that you didn't maybe necessarily always listen to, but then when you did, you were like, oh crap, that is one of the greatest songs. That it's really, really good. This podcast, it's about picking the best songs from them and throwing them on there. That's the thing that you could be like, well, how are you doing a pod about that? Because everybody has the greatest hits. Well, some people are just better at picking what's on there than others. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love this suggestion by you, because that's what this is. It's a perfect mix of play the game, some of the others, that are not the ones that I named, that are really, really good. And that's one that if you want to listen to, if you've never been a big Queen person and listen to them much, go to this one and listen. Under Pressure's not on it. So it's, there's other things that then you could go into a deep dive in other directions, but it definitely hits the 101s, the ones you got to absolutely listen to from Queen.
It's got some deeper tracks on there than...
Well, just a couple, but not a lot.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, it's pretty much hits the main ones.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a good mix of those. It's a good mix of those. And they just the right hits. So anyway, that's one that I had on CD. And when I got it, this is perfect. Perfect.
Oh, very good. No, I love me some Queen. I have... this weird 2 CD bootleg compilation that I got when I was in Ukraine in 2000. So I got some really interesting stuff there.
Yeah.
I don't know who made this, but I have my own version of that. It's not of what you've got, but it's somebody made a compilation. That's something I treasure as much. I think I love me some Queen, but I'll have to dig that out and show it to you sometime.
Because you can't go wrong with one of the greatest voices of all time. Freddie Mercury is something else.
I'll talk a little bit about Queen in our next segment about a certain 45 that my brother and I had.
Good deal. All right, number 8.
Oh gosh. All right. I'll try to blaze through this one. This is a 4-way tie, so I'll go through this, but you'll forgive me because it's the Beatles. So 8A, you'll be very familiar. No, I'm jumping ahead of myself. The Beatles anthology. I think that's probably one of the most essential, if not the most essential, Beatles compilations ever in the mid 90s when they came out with that. A lot of rare and unreleased stuff. I actually had all 3 of these on LP back in the 90s, and it's a very amazing, significant collection. And
I didn't realize they put that out on
did.
LP, on vinyl.
I had all 3 of them, and unfortunately, I got rid of them, and so I feel bad about that now. But I don't even have a record player anymore. So what are you going to do?
Right.
And related to that, just a year before the Beatles anthology came out, they came out with BBC, Live at the BBC. And that sort of was kind of dipping their toe in the waters. That was in 94, but amazing, solid live versions. They came out with a volume 2 in 2013, actually. But those are, I equally treasure those as well. 8C, this is the one you're going to be extra familiar with, Beatles Past Masters.
Mm-hmm. Those were good.
In fact, I have a certain friend who had volume 2 of that, who I borrowed it from, and I taped it from him. That somebody was Tony Wherley.
I've heard of them.
But real quick, just to explain what that is, in the 1980s, when the CD market started exploding and all these companies putting everything on CD,
right?
When the Beatles released their CDs, they were releasing only the original British versions of all their LPs, which made them more sense because they had the most tracks on them. The U.S. versions were different. We'll talk about those in a second. But they put all the British versions of their LPs plus the Magical Mystery Tour, which is U.S. only at the time. But on their original LPs, they didn't have any of their singles that they'd released. So what Past Masters 1 and 2 did was it collected all those singles into these collections. So if you bought all the Beatles CDs in the 90s, during that time in the 80s, I'm sorry, and then you got Past Masters Volume 1 and 2, you basically have all the Beatles songs up to that point. But that was a great collection of stuff.
Yeah, I had both of them on CD. I know I...
Oh, you had Volume 1 too?
I think I did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because one of them was white with black.
That was
leather,
Volume 2.
And then I had the one with black and white.
Volume 1.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sure I had both of them.
Okay. I remember borrowing Volume 2 from you and taping it. Or maybe you taped it for me, I'm not sure.
Yeah, but I do remember having those, yeah.
And then, so that leads me to my other one here. The U.S. Beatles albums were not finally released on CD until 2004 with the Capitol albums box sets, Volume 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So the original U.S. albums they had a different track listing order. They had fewer songs in each album. And then they also included all of the singles on there. And then also, in addition to that, they were slightly different mixes in some cases. And the neat thing about these Capitol albums box sets is they have both the stereo and mono versions of each song.
Those aren't the ones that are like red and blue, are they?
No, those were
What are those called?
Those were released in the early 70s, I believe.
Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, though, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, where the pictures are taken like several years apart, but it's the same basically pose, but the red album and the blue album, which would be a case for another greatest Beatles album. So those are all my Beatles. There's a ton of Beatles stuff you could pick, but the Beatles, what can you say about the Beatles? So
not a lot. That hasn't already been said. I mean, changed music.
What more can you say about the Beatles?
Changed music. My number 8 is something that I don't know if I would have thought initially when I first started talking about or putting this together. and again, I Googled it just to make sure I wouldn't miss anything, is number 8 is, it's called Chronicle, 20 Greatest Hits from CCR. I don't know if I was that big of a Creedence Clearwater or Revival fan when we were kids, but I did like them and I did listen to them. And when I saw this, I remembered I had it on cassette. And boy, if it doesn't hit every single thing that they put out, that was a good song. And I listened to it last week at work, and it goes from one to another to another to another. And I know from having gone back and listened to their full albums, there's stuff that's left off that is not bad, but it's an absolutely great compilation of their greatest songs that you're like, damn, that's good. And this is good. And that's good. And the next one comes on and you're like, I love every one of these songs. And again, that could be your, shot at doing a greatest hits, but some of it is picking those songs and even the order that they're in that makes it really, really good. So they're a band that everybody kind of knows who they are. You might not wake up on a Monday morning tomorrow and go, I want to listen to CCR on the way to work. But when you do listen to those songs, it takes you back to when you were listening to them, even though they came out in the 60s. That is a greatest hits.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, if you never,
Okay.
I mean, it is. If you go listen to it, I will assume you'll be like, unless you absolutely can't stand them, you'll be like, yeah, that's a good mix or gathering, pulling together of their best music.
Yeah, no, they're
It's
solid.
good. Yeah, loved them.
Awesome.
Number 7.
A two-way tie here. Led Zeppelin. I've got the Led Zeppelin 40th Anniversary Definitive Collection of Mini LP Replica CDs. So this is like I don't have the physical edition of this. I'd love to, but it's like a bunch of mini LP replicas, basically. What makes this special is the extras on 2 of the albums, and so they're both in one place, so it's a convenient place to have them. The song remains the same. I'd never, for years, I wasn't intentionally avoiding this album, but I just never went on my way to listen to it ever until a couple of years ago, and it melted my brain. It was so good. The live album? The live album. Yeah, the song remains the same, the live album.
Have you ever seen the movie, the video?
I watched the movie at the same time. So I listened to the album.
Pretty kooky.
Loved it.
Pretty kooky off the bat.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Some drugs involved in that planning.
Perhaps. A lot of Tylenol. But yeah, so the album just melted my brain. It was so good. I can't believe I just never heard it all those years. But this edition has 6 extra tracks that were included in the film, but not on the original LP. So if you look at the original LP, it's like kind of lean, actually. Of course, they had to make room for the 27-minute version of Dazed and Confused.
Which I was getting ready to say.
Yeah,
I'm a big Dazed. Like, that is something else.
That was like its own entire.
Might be my favorite Led Zeppelin song.
There you go. Well, so this edition contains 6 extra tracks to synchronize it with the film. So it's got all the songs that were in the film. So it's just an amazing compilation there. And I really love the live version. It just might be the best live version of any song ever. But the song remains the same / Rain song. Holy cow, that is. I'd be hard pressed to find a better live song.
Yeah, the Rain song is one of the greatest songs of all time.
I concur. The Rain song, and I did not know how great the live version of the Rain song was. Like, I've loved the Rain. The Rain song has been one of my favorite for years, but the live song, taking it to a whole new level. But that 1-2 combo. Also, the extra tracks on Coda. So like the 4 extra tracks that weren't on the original Coda, including the excellent White Summer. So that really kind of takes Coda to the next level. I know Jerry mentioned Coda as one of his favorite albums,
right?
And so this extra song edition makes it really special. And the other Led Zeppelin thing I want to mention, the complete BBC sessions from 2016.
That's good.
It was originally released in '97 as the BBC Sessions, but the 2016 edition added an whole extra disc full of stuff and added the word complete. Just excellent collection of live performances with multiple versions of several songs. For example, if you like the song Communication Breakdown, you're in luck. It's got 5 different versions of that. So you have to really like that. It's got an awesome 13-minute, 45-second Whole Lotta Love medley. Many rare songs that never appeared on any of their original albums, like The Girl I Love, She Got Long Black Wavy Hair.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Something Else, and Sunshine Woman, which is really uber rare. They didn't even have the original master tape of that. I think they had to try to master it the best they could from like a radio recording or something. So that's pretty solid. I only have the digital version of that one as well. But again, I listen to it, I treasure it.
Well,
Good
we
stuff.
know how much I love them. So, I mean, they still are. I just love them so much. So, yeah, any of the things that have been put out since they no longer were a band have been really, really good.
Yeah, excellent. They loom large in your legend.
Yeah, right. Tony Zoso is a big thing.
Yes.
So, my number 7 is an album that actually or a greatest hits that actually charted and was on the charts forever. It's really well known for the fact that it stayed on the charts for a long time. And it is called Their Greatest Hits 1971 to 1975 by the Eagles. There's not a song on there that doesn't belong on there. It has my favorite Eagles song, the greatest Eagles song, in my opinion, One of These Nights. It has a good mix of the stuff from those first 4 years of their band. I mentioned earlier already their second greatest hits, which it's good, but doesn't touch this. I like the Eagles. I don't know if I always did. Whatever you think about them is the funny thing about the Eagles is whatever you think about Don Henley, whether you like him or don't like him, or whether you're a Glenn Fry. I love Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh is one of my favorites. I love the James Gang. There's just parts of the Eagles that, I really do like. And that greatest hits, I feel like, is pretty good. So, and I love One of These Nights. So
That's a solid collection. I think that was one of the, when I rejoined, I should say, the Columbia Record Club, our junior year of high school. That was one of the cassettes that I got. And I'm a sucker for Lion Eyes, man. That's just a really, really great tune.
Yep. It is. It's full of really, really good songs. So
good times.
And again, nothing really deep about it. It's just a really good one. And if you've never listened to the Eagles, that's a good place to start instead of just digging into an album. So here we are at number 6 already.
Number 6. My number 6 is Derek and the Dominoes, the Layla Sessions from 1990. Hopefully you're shaking your head. That's a good thing. Like you agree or you disagree. I don't know. Anyway, I still have a physical edition of this. It's probably the first box that I ever got. It's a magnificent collection. 3 CDs. The first CD is the original album. The second CD is alternate takes. And the third CD are long jam sessions. And that's the crown jewel of this collection, I think, are those long jam sessions. There's 5, 15 to 20 minute long jam sessions. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head at you because it is. I listened to Bell Bottom Blues the other day off that. And it's just, it's why you love music. It is
phenomenal.
It's
Listen,
so good. It's. I'm a big Clapton fan anyway. I had Eric Clapton's Crossroads, that box set. I have that in the room behind you. That is a terrific choice. So good.
Oh, thank you. I don't know
good.
if you're like me, and when I remember first seeing it displayed in a Music Land.
Right.
In the mall, so they had it prominently displayed.
Yeah,
and I remember
it probably was overpriced to the point you couldn't afford it.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't get it when it was first released, but a few years later, I want to say maybe in 92 or 93, I got it. I'm pretty sure it might be the first box that I ever got, but still one of the best. is so phenomenal.
Well, and it's funny that you say the jam thing because I don't have it on my list on my piece of paper over here. But the last box set I ever got, I got for Christmas from my mother and father-in-law was Dreams, the Allman Brothers Band box set, and it's nothing but jams. Like it's so many like what you're talking about, 23-minute long songs, and they were. I love that. I love that about the Dead and them, Allman Brothers, and what you're talking about is exactly right. Those jam sessions from bands like that are so good. Just masterpieces. You can sit there and listen to them.
Yep.
Those things are perfect to listen to in July when you're floating in your swimming pool. I've done that before.
Perfect.
My number 6 is one that I can't find. I don't think you can get your hands on anymore. And someone that we went to high school with that was a year older than us. He had this album by a guy named Jimi Hendrix, and the cover of it was a white background with an artwork of Jimmy's face that you could it was white through it, and then a rainbow colored headband that he was wearing, and it was called Kiss the Sky. So it's a greatest hits of Jimi Hendrix that you can't find now. I Googled it. I've looked everywhere for it. And it had everything that you would think would be on it. It had Kiss the Sky and All on the Watchtower and Crosstown Traffic and all of Jimi Hendrix's best. But it introduced me to a song called Red House, which was a blues song that he did, and he just killed. It had a song called Killing Floor on it that was on, that's actually on Are You Experience's first album ever. But I never knew what it was. We just listened to what we heard on the radio. And it was such an amazing greatest hits that I borrowed it on cassette from this guy that we knew. And when I started researching this making up this list of what greatest hits, I was like, I'll never forget that one. I don't think I ever owned it myself. I couldn't find it. There's a million others. There's Jimi Hendrix smash hits. There was a purple one that I had called The Essential Jimi Hendrix. He's had other things, but this one had a great album cover, and it was full of all of the great things, or the things that made Jimi Hendrix who he was, and I just loved that one. It was such a good one. So that one sticks out because of the memories and how great it was. So.
Oh, that's cool. I need to. I think Jimi Hendrix is one of those weird gaps in my musical vocabulary. I had mentioned I've got just odd, weird gaps that shouldn't be there of like really common things like how have you never listened to too much? I only know what I've heard on the radio. Basically, I've never owned any Jimi Hendrix albums, but it's like I clearly need to get caught up on that. And if you're looking for that particular album. Discogs is your friend. I'm assuming you've gotten it on there before.
I follow him on Instagram. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So yeah, I mean, you're gonna find collectors that have used copies that it might be really pricey. I mean, in certain cases, there might not be any copies available. In which case, it's rarer than hen's teeth. But
yeah, I don't even know if it was released on CD or if it was just on cassette. Like it got.
Maybe it's a bootleg or something.
No, I mean, all I know is it was amazing. And if you've not listened to Jimi Hendrix, if someone's like you and hasn't listened to them much, just start at the beginning. Are You Experience is his first album. Axis Bold as Love is wonderful. Electric Ladyland is next. But yeah, Jimi Hendrix, just another sad story of someone who was 27 years old who didn't make it very long and had an unlimited amount of talent ahead of him. So we're in the top 5 already.
Indeed.
So here's your number 5.
My number 5 is a greatest hits album that came out back in 1971, a single LP by The Who, Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy. This is just a fantastic collection of songs, nearly all of which were UK singles. I actually had this in LP. At one time, I got rid of almost all my LPs a few years back, and I think I might have even had this on 8-track as well at one time. I'm not 100% certain on that, but if you're looking for just like the greatest collection of of Who songs, that's just a really solid collection. I just think it's perfect.
I don't know if this is a dumb thing to say, but are the Who underrated?
In fact,
Or are they not rated?
I thought they were like one of the major British invasion bands. I thought they were.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Rated
Like,
pretty highly.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well, I mean, I always thought they were like number 3, right, behind the Beatles and the Stones.
yeah, I just mean like when you talk Zeppelin, you talk, you know,
And well, Led Zeppelin came a little bit later,
Stones and whatever.
slightly
Just like
later.
the Who are so good. Like you go back and listen, like the Who's the band I think that when I go back and listen to them that I forgot how just absolutely terrific they are.
Oh, the Who's kind of like that, I suppose.
I mean, and maybe it's just me. I mean, I've always liked them, the songs that I like, but I don't know how many times in the last 10 years I've gone back and listened to Quadrophenia or Tommy or any of the other albums for that matter.
Well, the first one you mentioned.
They're just so good. They have so many great songs. And, you know, when people throw out the names of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, I don't know, maybe I'm just making that up, but they're so good. And so any greatest hits that you would put on this list made by that band, it has to be good and deserving. So, yeah, I love The Who. Absolutely love The Who.
I used to be obsessed with Quadrophenia.
Yeah,
Just absolutely obsessed
it's
with that.
such a they're so good.
And Who's Next? And you
Who's
can't deny
next?
that.
Who's next is
That's phenomenal.
That's a front to back, meaning every song gets played. It's
That's one of a few
It's
albums.
hard to
that-
believe it came out the year we were born.
I was just going to say that
Yeah.
you're reading my mind. I was going to say that and Led Zeppelin 4 came out the year we were born. It's like that was a great year for stuff to happen.
Yeah, that album is something else.
And the first video arcade game too. So it was a great year.
So good. My number 5 is actually the only box set on my list. On my top 10 anyway.
Yep.
It was purchased for me actually by a guy named Andrew Bidney, a dear friend of mine, because I was a big fan and really, really listening to a lot of the band and the artist Carlos Santana. Carlos Santana put out something called Dance of the Rainbow Serpent, a 3 CD set. Has stuff from his band Santana, stuff from his solo career, and then this would have been pre-Rob Thomas and that Supernatural and stuff. But it has so many great Santana songs. It has songs that he did with blues legend John Lee Hooker that are just great. I love Santana. Santana was like in a weird place when we were kids in terms of like 80s music. And you mentioned K-Tel, you know, when we were talking that. I love them. And this box set got played like crazy. It's so good. Because again, it has everything. It has his solo stuff. It has stuff that he did with Santana. It's a really, really good compilation mix. 3 perfect CDs of their best music. If you've never listened to Santana, you should get your hands on that. And it's on Spotify, so it's good. You can get it on there. So,
Well, I'm pretty familiar with Abraxas, their album.
masterpiece.
I concur, yeah, for sure.
Masterpiece.
But
Such a good-
beyond
such
that, I
a
haven't.
good album.
Beyond that, I really haven't listened to much
Yeah,
Santana.
I've listened to everything they've put out, and I love them.
Oh man,
Love them. They're one of those that why I love streaming, because you can decide, hey, I'm gonna make a run at this, and you can listen to everything quite simply, and they're all on there. So
I think I need to go back and fill in with
That's the
that.
only box set on my list, other than the ones I mentioned at the beginning, and maybe some I might just missed. So inside the top 5, we go to your number 4.
Number 4, I have another single LP called Squeeze, the band Squeeze, singles 45s and under, from 1982. One of the very first LPs I ever picked up when I first started collecting vinyl in the early 90s. It's just simply an outstanding collection of songs. It's just quintessential. It's just got like all the greatest stuff. It's just a really good introduction to Squeeze. When you listen to it, you just fall in love with them. They're amazing. Just got great songs on there. Pulling muscles from the Shell.
Fantastic song.
Goodbye Girl. Up the Junction. Just great stuff. I think the one song that probably people in the U.S. know from them, if you listen to classic rock station, the one song that they play over and over again, Tempted. Of course, that's on there, which is really strange when you think about it, because Paul Carrack was only with him for like maybe one album.
See, that's what I was going to ask you, is because I knew Paul Carrack was the name that popped into my head. And I think of Tempted, and when you first started, I thought instantly of Pulling Muscles for Michelle. So he wasn't the lead singer of them, or he wasn't, for an extended period of time?
No, he was, I think it was just one album, and he just sang like a few songs or something.
Paul Carrack
that happened to be...
what's the song on his solo album?
One Good Reason? Well, that was the name of his album. Song.
What was the song?
No, I think the song was
Don't Shed a Tear for Me.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He had two songs.
The album, what you said is the title of the
album.
album.
Okay, title.
Because I had it on cassette, yeah.
But yeah, that was Squeeze is one of my all-time favorite bands ever. I absolutely love them.
Yeah, I absolutely, when you said that, I can see that album cover and that album in my head. Yeah, 100%.
I think it came out in 82, I think, and so one of my favorite songs by them isn't on there. Remember Hourglass from 85, 86?
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
Yeah, you remember if you heard it. I think it's one of those songs, like a forgotten song,
right,
that you probably haven't heard in decades, and then it would be a long forgotten memory. It's like, oh, I do know that one. So that's my number 4.
Well, my number 4 was playing on a tour bus on the way out of the Sandals Resort, leaving Jamaica on the south side of Jamaica, as my beautiful wife and I were getting ready to head back to the United States of America. But I listened to it a lot on my way leading up to going to Jamaica, and while I was in Jamaica, and I found it from when I was working at Western with a couple of guys who were listening to it. Bob Marley and the Wailers album Legend is a compilation of his greatest hits and their greatest hits. It's so good. I've listened to it a million times, and it was just funny that that's what they were listening to on our way out of Jamaica. It's got everything on it. Jammin', Waiting in Vain. Waiting in Vain is the best, my favorite Bob Marley song. Buffalo Soldier, Is This Love? People say Three Little Birds, which is okay. But yeah, I love Bob Marley, and I love that. That is a perfect introduction to get you going if you want to start listening to Bob Marley, and then you go from there and listen to the album Exodus and some other stuff. But putting this list together, it's like, that's got to be in it. That's got to be in my top 4. So
okay,
Bob
wow.
Marley. If you've never listened to Bob Marley, there's a place to start. The album Legend.
As a matter of fact, I have never listened to Bob Marley. I other than the fact that he exists, I don't know anything about him.
Well, I mean, reggae is one of those things where it's like, it's not. I mean, I Shot the Sheriff's on the radio, but other than those other ones I listed, I don't know if they're on the radio or not. But they're all really good songs, and definitely you should give them a chance if you're wanting to branch out and try something new. But it wasn't just because I went to Jamaica. I was listening to that stuff back in 1990. So really, really good compilation of his great, great music. So,
oh, very good.
Number 3.
Number 3. Okay, Tony, do you have any, I'm sure you've got memories like this, but do you have like certain memories of like where you have just like an amazing purchase, like even decades later, you remember like, oh, I remember when I went to this record store and I bought these albums or whatever, and it's like one of the greatest purchases I ever made. Like, do you still remember like individual albums on certain days?
100%.
Yeah, so I figured like if anybody...
Yeah, the first 2 CDs I ever bought in person. I joined Columbia House's CDs or BMG when we were seniors, like we had just graduated. But the first 2 CDs, this is quintessential me. I went to Rockin' Robins and bought the CD Highway to Hell from AC/DC. At the same time, I bought Loked After Dark from Tone Loc. So those 2 things don't go together, like a little Sesame Street thing,
And
like,
you kind of associate them with each other, right?
Because like,
there you go.
She had to be looking at me like, really? You're buying those 2 together?
So you're selling it?
Right, yep.
So yeah, I remember in Macomb, there were like 3 main music stores at the time. There was like...
the Queen, Rockin' Robins.
Rockin' Robins, the Phoenix, and Disc and Dat there for a while. So one day in, it would have been like the first week of October of 1993, I walked into Disc and Dat, and I purchased 3 CDs. And to this day, it's the single greatest music purchase I ever made. I bought Abbey Road by the Beatles, Big Star, number 1 record / Radio City, and then the Best of Badfinger Volume 2. So my number 3, I've got 2 of those tied for number 3. Big Star, if you're not familiar with them, they were, maybe they're slightly more well-known now, but for a long time they were just obscure because they were on the Stax label, and Stax did not know how to market them, but they're just one of the most amazing bands of all time. People might know them that they... their song was one of their songs was used for the theme song of That 70s Show, so that's how they're kind of more well known. But this single CD that I bought contains their first 2 albums, number 1 record in Radio City, and they were an excellent and overlooked power pop band from the early 70s. Every song on this compilation CD, it's just basically a single CD, but with their first 2 albums on it. Every song is outstanding and just essential. It just essentially plays as their greatest hit CD. It's amazing. And the other one I mentioned, The Best of Badfinger Volume 2, which came out in 1990. Another excellent 70s power pop band, best known for being on the Beatles' Apple label. Just an excellent selection of tracks. The odd thing about this album, their Volume 2, Best of Volume 2, came out in 1990. Their Best of Volume 1 CD came out in 1995. Yeah, I made that same look. I was like, wait, what? So for some reason, they released Volume 2 first. So as I said, the Best of Badfinger Volume 2, the Big Star number 1 record / Radio City, and then Beatles Abbey Road, the greatest single purchase I ever made. But those 2 that I mentioned are tied for number 3 for sure.
That Big Star thing is good. I listened to them within the past 5 years. We're so tied through social media to my friends who listen to a lot of music, and I listen to it. And yes, that's very, very good. The Badfinger thing, I don't know it. I'd have to listen. I'd have to give it a search.
Essential.
Yeah, I've not listened to that. So,
man.
My number 3, speaking of purchase, I remember purchasing the band for my number 3. They've put out a lot of greatest hits, a lot of live albums, a lot. Led by somebody named Mick and somebody named Keith. I remember buying an album called Rewind, the greatest hits Rewind of basically the 70s, early 80s, for our friend Q. Went to the mall, got it from Music Land for him. And that was one I was like, oh, should that be on there? But I didn't put that on there. I ended up going with Hot Rocks. The Rolling Stones have a double album called Hot Rocks, if you've never had your hands on it. And it pretty much runs down the list of the best Stones songs. There's not a bad song on it. You could get it and not have to buy a Stones album. It's missing things in the time period of streaming. I've listened to all the Stones albums now that I didn't listen to them when we were kids necessarily, didn't have access to them. I listen to the album Tattoo You all the time. I, of course, picked it high on my list of the best of 1981. But Hot Rocks is my number 3. And it doesn't surprise me that it's there because I've listened to it a million times and it fits. It's just chock full of great Rolling Stones. And I wouldn't even call myself, I'm not known for, again, from the beginning of this, I'm a Zeppelin guy, Pink Floyd guy. I'm not known for a love of the Stones, but it's pretty damn good. It's got everything on it.
In fact, I do remember that you love the Stones very much. I think, I don't know if I borrowed Hot Rocks from you at one time or not, a long time ago, but I predicted that this was going to be on your list pretty high up. But
yeah, I had it on CD. I never had it on cassette.
Great choice.
But yeah, it's good. It holds up all these years later.
I've really gained an appreciation for the Stones in the last few years too. They just were never on my radar too much.
Right.
But I had a friend who was like the biggest Stones fan ever, and so it just kind of rubbed off on me. I started listening to their albums from the very beginning, and so I gained a much deeper appreciation for them.
Yeah, they're clearly they're one of the greatest bands of all time. But
absolutely.
So here we are at number 2. So
Yes.
what just got beat out?
Okay. You mean the honorable mentions?
No. I mean your 2. What's sitting at number 2? What's the one that just wasn't good enough to be number 1?
Got it. Well, no. This the way I prefer to look at it is that it's good enough to be number 2. It's that high up on the list.
Right.
If there's any band that I would just like get out in the street corner and just start preaching about how great they are and try to spread the word, it's this band right here. And I've discovered them relatively recently. How much do you know about a band called Fanny? Have you heard of a band called Fanny at all?
I don't think so.
That's a pretty common reaction. They were a criminally overlooked rock band from the early 1970s. They are just outstanding. So I want to give you a quote from David Bowie. And so do you trust David Bowie? If David Bowie says, "Hey, this is good," would you say like, "All right, David"?
Yes, I will trust David.
Okay, David Bowie was a huge fan. He knew them personally. Even had a relationship with Gene, the bass player. His quote from the December 30th, 1999 Millennium Special issue of Rolling Stone. Here's his quote. "One of the most important female bands in American rock has been buried without a trace. Fanny. They were one of the finest effing rock bands of their time in about 1973. They're as important as anybody else who's ever been, ever. It just wasn't their time. Revivify Fanny, and I will feel that my work is done." This is coming from David Bowie. So Fanny... the album, the box set that I'm specifically talking about is called The First Time in a Long Time, the Reprise recordings from 2002. It's their first 4 albums that were on the Reprise label, and plus a bunch of extra tracks, a lot of live stuff. They were a phenomenal live band. Another fan of Fanny, Joe Elliott from Def Leppard, has been a huge fan since age 12 when he received a UK magazine with a flexi disc with their song Blind Alley. He said it had a big influence and impact on him. But this particular collection I don't have a physical edition of because Rhino put it out in 2002, limited to 5,000 copies. The cheapest one on Discogs starts at $200, but the full playlist is on YouTube, so that's where I listen to it at. But if you want to check out one Fanny song, I highly recommend looking up "Young and Dumb" on the Beat Club on their Beat Club performance. So the Beat Club performance of "Young and Dumb," if you look it up like that, and they just absolutely wail. They kill it. They're absolutely wonderful. Also worth noting, and I do have the physical edition of this. I got it just this past week. So they put out a new box set called Fanny the Reprise Years 1970-1973. And it's very similar to the Rhino one, almost exactly the same thing. The Rhino one had a few songs that this one doesn't, but this one has a few songs that one didn't. So it's kind of evens out, I suppose. But I do have the physical edition of this. So that technically this would probably be my number 2. I haven't even listened to it yet. So that's how close I've gotten it. But look up "Young and Dumb" on YouTube. Their Beat Club performance of that. Someone with the blue background. Amazing.
That's what's great is you can find stuff that you've never heard before, and that's why we just did TV shows. It's different. Like you're watching a TV show is going to take more time. Looking that up, it's not going to take you time at all.
Just like 3.5 minutes.
Right. Yeah. So. My number 2 is funny because I would have never dreamt that this would have ended up at number 2. One of the first albums I ever got, vinyls, not this album, but from this band, a band that I listened to a lot in the late 70s. And when you look at this, if you're listening to this and you go find this greatest hits, it's just fire after fire after fire after fire. The Bee Gees put out a greatest hits called Greatest. It's basically the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack with all of their other great stuff in it that other people covered, that their brother Andy Gibb covered, that he may have put out. I mean, it's got Nights on Broadway. It's got all, Jive Talkin', Staying Alive, Too Much Heaven, Inside and Out. It is so good. When I started doing this and I found that one and I had it on CD, cassette, I don't remember which one. It is loaded. Just loaded. And again, like I said, it's stuff that they may have given to somebody else that somebody else put out, and then they just released their version of it. So good. And I know disco, the Bee Gees were a huge part of my music listening when I was a little kid. And it's just funny that they end up at number 2, but they deserve it. Every bit of it. So good.
What period of years does it cover?
It covers all of that, like during the Saturday Night Fever, but it also like stuff before that. I don't think it goes as recent. Like there was one that came out around the time we graduated from high school, like a compilation. So it would have had anything they would have done later. I don't think it goes into the mid 80s probably.
Oh, okay.
Would be my guess. I think it was released like 79 or something.
Okay.
So
does it go all the way back to the beginning, like the early years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's fantastic. Nights on Broadway was a song that I didn't know what it was when we were kids. And it is such a great Bee Gees song. They're so good. Just so good.
I'll have to check it out.
So good. I mean, literally, just go to that and start playing, and you're gonna. There's your grade school years right there of disco. So good stuff. All right. So awesome. Here we are. We got one left, but before we get to the one, let's go to our just missed / honorable mention.
Okay.
What just couldn't crack the top 10 and probably should have.
All right. So this one really did just miss my top 10. It was painful to leave out, but this one is going to be Styx, the complete wooden nickel recordings. This is from 2005. So these 2 CDs collect Styx's first 4 albums, which were on the wooden nickel label. So before they went on to A&M. So this is pre-Equinox. Equinox is, I think, when they were starting to get more well-known and more famous. But I do have this physical set, but it's a really, really great collection. I love those first 4 albums so much. Number 2, The Police, Message in a Box, the complete recordings from 1993. Every single Police song ever. So you can't go wrong with that.
No, I love The Police.
Next one, number 3. This one might be outside of our shared Venn diagram. This one's going to be Weird Al Yankovic, Permanent Record, Al in the Box from 1994. This is a great selection of songs with some extra tracks. What really makes that set special is the cool packaging and the booklet. I actually used to have this, but for some reason I think I gave it away, so I was dumb for doing that. I don't know if you...
No, my friend Noah loves Weird Al, so when he listens to this, he'll be all in on it. I'm not a Weird Al person. So.
Noah, you're awesome. It's worth mentioning, I don't have the physical edition of this one either. Squeezed Box, the complete works of Weird Al Yankovic from 2017. It's all of his albums in a replica accordion, both CD and LP versions. The LP version I think would be cooler. The CD version is extremely expensive to get now. You can only get used. The LP version, you can't even find that one at all. I've never seen it on Discogs. What makes this really special, besides the presentation, is it contains the Medium Rarities album that comes with lots of rare and unreleased stuff. Next one, absolutely nobody out there will even have remotely heard of this. I don't even know if I can say this right. anyway, I'm not even going to say the album. It's in Swedish, but Agneta from ABBA, Agneta Fältskog.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so she did. I mean, I could pronounce her name. I can't pronounce the name of the album. It's like De Första Åren, 1967 to 1979. I might have butchered that. These were all of her solo albums, most of which were pre-ABBA. I used to have this one, a Swedish-only import, so it's all in Swedish. I sold it a while back for quite a bit of money, actually. And finally, I've got Return to the Valley of the Go-Go's. It's a 2 CD set from '94. A ton of live stuff, B-sides, and unreleased tracks. And that's a really, really great album.
That's a great 80s group.
Yep.
Such an influential group
Love the
from our
Go-Go's.
youth. Yeah. My 5. So 5. Box set Immaculate Collection from Madonna.
Oh, nice.
A couple of new tracks on there. Justify My Love. Anyone that knows me, I loved Madonna in the 80s, early 90s. She made great music, gorgeous, always just a huge Madonna fan. That box set, poster, CD, and a kind of a, interesting case and all kind. Yeah, she was big fan of Madonna. So that's number 5. Number 4, begged my mom to buy me the best of Kansas when she went shopping somewhere. I put that on there only because I remember thinking she would never get it. She wasn't going to get it. She just didn't buy. It was just random. It wasn't birthday. It wasn't Christmas. It was just, I know you're going shopping. And I remember so much that I was working ground. I was farming, helping my dad that day. And she came home and had it. I don't know how good it is. Carry On, Your Wayward Son and Dust in the Wind and blah, blah, blah. But memories to it. So
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, that was my gateway into Kansas. I was a huge Kansas fan for a short time in the early 90s when I was into prog rock.
The radio played into that, and that's how we ended up with that cassette at my house. Number 3, So Far by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. A lot of good songs on that. I had it on CD, listened to it over and over, and ended up leading me to buy their box set that I ended up selling. I don't still have it because it wasn't a lot of the stuff that they made that wasn't on. It wasn't as great, but I would really listen to that one a lot. Number 2, Stevie Wonder, the original Musicarium. It has I bought it on CD before I realized how great he was, and I never listened to it much. I listened to Superstition back in my time of not getting it. And then you go listen to it now on streaming, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever. There's 2 unreleased songs on it, and they are fantastic. It is such a good CD. It has the hits, and then it has That Girl might be the best Stevie Wonder song ever, and you might not even have heard it. It's so good.
I was on a huge Stevie Wonder kick a year or so ago.
I listen to him all the
huge
time.
kick. He's really, really great.
So talented.
Very good choice.
So talented. And then my number 1 is, it had to be on here because it defines greatest hits. I remember getting the red and white covered greatest hits for an album or for a band called Aerosmith. And because it was your way of getting into them, because you'd heard Dream On and Back in the Saddle Again. But it also had some I hated. I couldn't stand them. And now I like them. Back then I didn't understand, why is this on here and why is that on your greatest hits? Because these songs aren't good. And now I really like them. But it shows, I put that on there because it shows how our tastes change from the time, hopefully 40 years ago, that we, see things in a different way, or our ear hears it in a better way. So that is everybody knew what that greatest hits was, because that might be the one you get. You could have got Toys in the Attic, because Toys in the Attic's probably their most popular album before they broke up, and then came back and played all the Sweetheart, Kiss Your Girlfriend music that they played after that. But
as soon as you said red and white, I immediately thought Aerosmith.
That's it.
I had to hold myself back from yelling it out because
Yeah.
that'd be uncouth.
Yeah, you know that. I mean, that's the album.
Yep.
Okay, so here we are to our number one greatest hits.
All right, without guessing it, do you think you know what my number one is? Or
No,
my
you've
number
totally
one?
thrown me. You've totally thrown me
Totally
for
thrown
a
you?
loop.
There's one guy. Go ahead.
I just try to think of the things I know you really like, and I don't have an idea of what you've got.
I think there's one person listening to this who will get it. His name is Chad Frederick. Chad, you know what I'm going to say, or at least you know what the group is. My favorite group of all time is Lush, and this is their box set Chorus. It's my favorite group of all time, and for many years prior to the release of this box set, I'd been hoping and praying for just such a box set, which never existed. I remember thinking, I wish they would just release something like that, like a huge box set. And they finally did. And it was exactly what I wanted. There's just so few times in life where that actually happens.
Right.
It's just amazing. It contains all their songs and their many, many B-sides. I had pretty much almost all these anyway, because a huge Lush collector. I got it, all their B-sides. There's so many B-sides, but they're amazing. And there was a cool LP version of this called Origami. The CD version is Chorus. The LP version is Origami. But it lacked many of the songs from the CD version. So that's why I got the CD version. Also, I didn't have an LP player at that point. I got to see Lush play live in Chicago on September 18th, 2016. It was one of the greatest experiences of my entire life. It was a religious experience. It was just extraordinary. So if you've ever seen like your favorite band of all time play live, you know what I'm talking about. It's just this amazing religious experience. I don't know how much you know about Lush, if you know any of their songs.
I know. Other than from you, I don't. But
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's cool that you wanted something. You were hoping for that, and then got it.
Look up Super Blast with an exclamation point on YouTube. You're welcome.
All right, my number one. Back to your Beatles, comes from my favorite Beatle, although my favorite Beatle may have changed over time a little bit because I've recently, in the last 5 years, fallen in love with the music of George Harrison. But in high school, I had a CD from a guy named Paul McCartney. And Paul McCartney put out a greatest hits called All the Best. And it spanned his time in Wings with his wife, Linda, his solo stuff, he and Michael Jackson, he and Stevie Wonder. It just kills. Band on the Run, Jet, Silly Little Love Songs, Coming Up, Good Night, and that one of I listened to it this week, and I sat there and I was like, damn, this is so good. I've listened to this so many times. A neat album cover. I don't know how or why it trickles to the top of all these things I've named, other than the fact that I just sit there and looked at. I went through every one of these that I've listed during this hour and 20 minutes that we've been talking, and I've listened to almost every one of them the whole way through, and it just kills.
Solid.
It kills. It is. It was good in 1987 when I was 16, and it's good today at 53. It's
Awesome.
really that good.
So that did come out before Flowers in the Dirt. That came out in 89, right?
Yeah, because Flowers in the Dirt. Yeah, because it's funny.
Oh, okay.
It's funny because I went down that rabbit hole the other day and was listening to Flowers in the Dirt because it came out the fall we went to college.
This one. That is one of the most amazing songs ever, right? Am I right?
Get Out.
Oh, man.
That album.
Great song.
That album, I went back and listened to it. Yeah. That was one of those purchases you bought it because of the hit.
Yeah.
My Brave Face.
Oh, that was the big one.
That was the hit.
Yeah.
And I sat there and listened to it. This one. There's a song called Figure of Eight on there. But anyway, his greatest hits. I think Q had it. I think I ended up getting Q and I had it. We both had it. So good. Such a good greatest hits. Well, I'm glad that you decided that we should do this because I hope that somebody listening to this is going to find a greatest hits, or maybe you're listening to this and you think, you know what greatest hits we should have said. So I didn't say this on the one we just shot, but comment on it when I put it on Facebook. You can't on YouTube because I don't care what crazy people around the world think. But let us know what you think. What did we miss? What did we hit on? Thank you for traveling from Adair, Illinois, and McDonough County all the way over here to Mason County so we could talk about the greatest hits.
Well, thank you for letting me jibber jabber.
All right. Good times. Don't forget, life is good. We'll see you.